In 2016, on a crisp autumn evening in Ohio, a campaign rally for Donald Trump became the talk of the town. From miles away, streams of cars packed the roads leading to the massive venue, where thousands of supporters, young and old, had gathered. The energy in the air was almost tangible, a buzz of excitement that seemed to grow louder with every passing minute. By the time the event began, the hall was bursting at the seams, with people spilling out into the surrounding parking lot, clutching signs, flags, and banners. The red MAGA hats were everywhere, creating a sea of crimson that stood out vividly under the bright floodlights. The slogan, "Make America Great Again," wasn't just written on hats or banners, it was etched into the very fabric of the crowd's spirit. Inside the hall, the atmosphere was electric. The crowd, a diverse mix of families, veterans, small business owners, and first-time voters, erupted into cheers that could rival the roar of a stadium during a championship game. The sound of chants, "Trump, Trump, Trump," rose and fell like waves, growing louder as anticipation mounted. Some waved homemade signs with messages of support, while others held their phones high, ready to capture every moment. Every corner of the venue pulsed with energy, a mix of excitement, hope, and the shared belief that they were witnessing history in the making. When Donald Trump finally stepped out from behind the stage curtain, the cheers turned into an overwhelming roar. The crowd surged forward, their voices blending into a single, unified wave of emotion. Trump, wearing his now iconic red hat, stood confidently under the lights. His presence commanded the room, his every movement amplified by the sheer intensity of the crowd's reaction. He waved to the audience, his broad smile and assured stride projecting a sense of familiarity and strength that seemed to resonate deeply with the thousands watching him. The noise was deafening, but it was clear Trump relished every second of it. He paused for a moment, taking in the sight of the packed hall, before raising his hand to quiet the crowd. Instantly, the chants subsided, replaced by an eager silence as all eyes fixed on him. His voice, firm and commanding, cut through the air as he began to speak. Each word was deliberate, delivered with a confidence that stirred something deep within the audience. Trump spoke with the kind of energy that could fill not just a room, but an entire city. His words weren't just promises, they were declarations of his vision for the country. He painted a picture of an America that had once been strong and prosperous, but had, in his words, lost its way. "We will bring back the jobs. We will rebuild our communities. And we will make America great again." His voice echoed through the hall, each phrase met with resounding applause and cheers that seemed to shake the very walls. As Trump continued, he outlined bold plans to restore the nation's economy, strengthen its borders, and ensure every American had a shot at the American dream. He spoke not just to the crowd in Ohio, but to the millions of Americans watching from their homes, offering a message of hope and revival. Each word seemed to light a spark in the hearts of those listening, their faces a mixture of determination and belief. This was more than a speech, it was a rallying cry, a call to action that left no one untouched. The crowd, swept up in the emotion of the moment, responded with unrelenting enthusiasm. Every pause in his speech was met with chants, cheers, and applause so loud it seemed to lift the roof. Strangers high-fived each other, children waved small American flags, and veterans saluted as Trump spoke about honoring their sacrifices. The energy in the room was infectious, as if everyone present was part of something far greater than themselves. That evening wasn't just another campaign stop. It was a moment of unity and inspiration, a gathering of thousands who believed they were part of a movement to reshape the country. For many, it was a night they would remember for years to come, a night where their hopes for the future felt tangible. their dreams for America reignited by a man who promised to make them a reality. As Donald Trump delivered his fiery and impassioned speech, captivating the thousands packed into the venue, an unexpected sight interrupted the flow. A small hand shot up from the sea of people, standing out amidst the red hats and waving flags. The moment was so sudden that even the rhythmic cheers and applause softened as eyes turned to see who dared to interrupt the high-energy rally. It was Emily, a 6-year-old girl with 2 perfectly tied braids that bounced slightly as she stood on her tiptoes, trying to be seen. She wore a simple blue dress, a little wrinkled from sitting on her mother's lap, and held a tiny American flag in one hand. Her large, curious eyes glimmered with a mix of nervousness and determination as she gazed toward the brightly lit stage where Trump was speaking. At first, Trump didn't notice her. He was in the middle of emphasizing his plans with the fervor and conviction that had become his trademark. But then, like a ripple in a pond, the sight of the little girl caught his attention. He paused mid-sentence, his gaze sweeping the audience until it landed on Emily. His eyes lit up, a mixture of amusement and genuine curiosity playing across his face. Trump straightened slightly, then pointed directly at her with an open hand, a warm smile spreading across his face. His voice softened, but still carried the same commanding energy as he said, "We've got a sweet little girl who wants to ask something. Emily, would you like to come up here on stage?" The crowd erupted into enthusiastic applause, their cheers of encouragement adding to the already electrifying atmosphere. Emily's mother, sitting beside her, gave a reassuring smile and gently nudged her forward. Taking her daughter's small hand, she guided her toward the stage. Emily hesitated for a moment at the base of the stairs, glancing nervously at the crowd that suddenly felt much larger than before. But the cheers didn't waver, and neither did Trump's warm, inviting gaze, gathering every ounce of courage her little heart could muster. Emily climbed the steps, her hand gripping her mother's tightly. When they reached the stage, Trump extended his hand toward Emily with a gentle gesture. She took it timidly, and he guided her to stand beside him in the spotlight. The crowd roared their approval, but Trump raised his hand to quiet them. Turning back to Emily, he crouched slightly to meet her at eye level. His smile never faded, and his tone became gentle and encouraging as he handed her the microphone. "What's your name?" he asked softly, his voice carrying the kind of warmth reserved for moments like these. "And what would you like to ask me?" For a moment, Emily froze, her tiny hands clutching the microphone tightly. She glanced at her mother, who nodded with encouragement, then turned back to Trump. The audience held their breath, the once roaring hall now so quiet that the hum of the stage lights could almost be heard. It was a moment unlike any other. The fiery energy of the rally had given way to something more intimate, a connection between a powerful man and a little girl who, with her innocence and curiosity, had managed to bring the entire event to a standstill. Everyone in that room, from the seasoned political analysts to the first-time rally attendees, knew they were witnessing something special. As Emily opened her mouth to speak, the crowd leaned in collectively, eager to hear what this small but brave voice would say. In that instant, the spotlight wasn't just on Emily, it was on the very essence of what the night represented: hope, connection, and the courage to speak up, no matter how small you might feel. Emily, standing on stage beside Donald Trump, looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. Her gaze shifted to the bright red hat perched on his head, its bold white letters spelling out a word she didn't fully understand. She clutched the microphone tightly in both hands, hesitating for just a moment before speaking. With a voice as innocent as the question itself, she asked, "Mr. Trump, what does MAGA mean?" Her words echoed through the microphone, carrying a mixture of wonder and sincerity that instantly drew the audience's attention. A soft wave of chuckles rippled through the crowd, many smiling at the simplicity of the question. But the room quickly quieted again, all eyes now fixed on Trump, waiting for his response. Trump's face lit up with a warm smile. He glanced briefly at the audience before turning his full attention back to Emily. His expression softened, and he nodded as if acknowledging the importance of her question. Then, in a steady and approachable tone, he began to explain. MAGA stands for Make America Great Again, he said, his voice carrying the conviction that had defined his campaign. He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. I chose that phrase because I believe America was once a truly great nation, a nation of hard work, opportunity, and pride. But over time, we've faced challenges, and some of that greatness has been forgotten. Emily's eyes remained fixed on him, her tiny head tilting slightly as she absorbed his words. Trump leaned in just a little, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret meant just for her, but loud enough for everyone to hear. I believe, he said, that if we all work together, if we dream big, stand strong, and never give up, we can bring our country back to those glory days. We can make America great again. Emily. His words hung in the air for a moment, and the crowd erupted into applause. The hall echoed with cheers. But Trump's focus never wavered from Emily. He watched her intently as she listened, her expression shifting from curiosity to understanding. Emily's little face brightened, her lips curving into a small, thoughtful smile. Her fingers, still clutching the microphone, tightened slightly, as though the question that had been answered only sparked another one in her mind. She glanced quickly at her mother, who was standing at the edge of the stage, and then looked back at Trump. There was a new confidence in her eyes now, a spark that suggested she wasn't done yet. The audience seemed to sense it too. They leaned forward, a collective anticipation building in the room. Trump, noticing her firm grip on the microphone, chuckled lightly and raised an eyebrow. Something tells me you've got another question for me, he said with a playful grin. Emily nodded, her braids bouncing slightly as she took a deep breath, preparing herself to speak once more. It was clear that this little girl, with her boundless curiosity and courage, wasn't afraid to ask the questions on her mind, even if they had the power to quiet an entire hall of thousands. Emily stood on the stage, her little frame almost dwarfed by the grandeur of the moment. But her curiosity outweighed her nerves, and her sparkling eyes locked onto the red hat perched atop Trump's head. Her gaze lingered there for a moment before she pointed at it, holding the microphone with both hands. Then, in her clear, innocent voice, she asked, "Mr. Trump, why is the hat red? Is it because you like that color?" The question hung in the air for just a moment before Trump threw his head back and laughed. A hearty, genuine laugh that echoed through the hall. The crowd erupted into cheerful laughter, some clapping, others smiling and nodding at the unexpected sweetness of her inquiry. Still chuckling, Trump leaned forward slightly, placing his hands on his knees to lower himself to her level. His eyes twinkled with warmth as he looked at her. "You know, Emily," he began, his voice soft but still carrying the confidence that defined him. "Red isn't just a color. It stands for something much bigger. Red represents strength, courage, and determination. It's a reminder to all of us that no matter how hard life gets, we need to stay strong, be brave, and never give up." The crowd fell silent, listening intently to his words. Trump paused for a moment, letting the significance of what he said settle over the room. Then, with a playful twinkle in his eye, he added, "And yes, Emily, I'll admit, I do like red a lot." His wink and the humor in his tone brought another round of laughter from the crowd. Some people whistled, others clapped, and the sound filled the hall once again. Emily giggled, her nerves seeming to melt away as she watched Trump's broad smile and felt the warmth of the audience's reaction. Trump stood back up, adjusting his tie and flashing a grin to the crowd. But his focus quickly returned to Emily. "Did that answer your question, young lady?" he asked, his voice still carrying that playful edge. Emily nodded, her braids bouncing slightly with the movement, but the thoughtful expression on her face suggested she wasn't entirely done. Her small brows furrowed just a bit, and she squinted up at him, as if the gears in her mind were turning once more. She gripped the microphone a little tighter, her tiny knuckles whitening slightly, and glanced briefly at her mother before turning her full attention back to Trump. The audience, sensing another question coming, hushed almost instinctively, their eyes fixed on the small but bold figure standing center stage. Trump, noticing her determined expression, tilted his head slightly, his curiosity clearly piqued. "You've got another question for me, don't you, Emily?" he asked with a knowing smile, his tone encouraging. Emily nodded again, this time with more conviction, and took a deep breath. It was clear that her boundless curiosity wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was the kind of genuine wonder that had captivated the entire room. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for her next words, knowing that once again, this little girl was about to command their full attention. Emily stood on the stage, her small hands gripping the microphone tightly. Her gaze shifted from the crowd, an ocean of faces watching her with encouragement, back to Donald Trump, who towered over her but radiated a warmth that seemed to ease her nerves. She hesitated for a moment, her little chest rising and falling as she gathered the courage to voice the question forming in her mind. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but carried a gravity that silenced the room. "Mr. Trump," she began, tilting her head slightly as she looked up at him, "is America not great anymore? If it isn't, what will you do to fix it?" Her words landed like a quiet thunderclap. The lively hall, which moments before had been filled with the sound of cheers and applause, fell into an almost eerie stillness. Every eye turned toward the stage, every ear straining to catch Trump's response. It was as if her innocent question had pierced through the noise and struck at the very heart of why everyone had gathered that night. Trump stood still for a moment, the weight of her words clearly settling on him. His confident demeanor softened, and his gaze lowered to meet Emily's. For a man who had made a career out of bold, declarative statements, this was something different, an opportunity for a moment of reflection in the face of pure, unfiltered curiosity. Leaning down slightly so he could speak directly to her, his voice took on a tone that was both warm and sincere, carrying the kind of weight that made the audience hang on his every word. "Emily," he began, pausing for just a second as if to choose his words carefully. "America is still a wonderful country. It's a country full of people who dream big, work hard, and care deeply about their families and communities. But sometimes," he said, his voice softening further, "we forget the most important things, like loving and helping each other, and putting the good of our community above ourselves." The room remained silent, the audience captivated not just by his words, but by the way he spoke them, as if they were meant for Emily alone. Trump straightened slightly but kept his focus on her, his expression serious yet encouraging. "You know," he continued, his voice carrying the cadence of someone sharing a deeply personal belief, "I don't think America needs to be perfect. No country is perfect. What America needs is people who are willing to fix what's broken. Just like when you have a favorite toy that's been damaged. You don't throw it away, do you? You take the time to mend it because it means something to you." Emily nodded slightly, her eyes never leaving his. Encouraged, Trump pressed on, "I believe that if we all work together, if we each do our part, we can fix the things that aren't working and make sure that everyone has the chance to succeed. No one should be left behind." "Emily, that's what I'm working to do," And that's what I believe we can accomplish together." Trump's voice carried a conviction that seemed to ripple through the room. It wasn't just Emily who felt the weight of his words. The audience, which had been so boisterous earlier, now sat in rapt attention. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was charged, filled with the kind of emotion that words alone couldn't convey. Emily looked at Trump with a mixture of understanding and thoughtfulness. She didn't say anything right away, but the slight smile tugging at the corners of her lips suggested that his answer had struck a chord. In that moment, the spotlight on the stage didn't just illuminate a 6-year-old girl and a man campaigning for the highest office in the land. It illuminated something deeper, a shared hope, a belief that, despite its challenges, the country's best days could still lie ahead. As the moment lingered, it was clear that Emily's question had done something no campaign slogan or speech could. It had reminded everyone in the room, from the youngest child to the most seasoned voter, of the simple, powerful truth at the core of their shared aspirations, the possibility of a better future, built together. The thunderous applause reverberated through the hall, but amidst the cheers and waving banners, a moment of quiet awe began to unfold. Donald Trump, standing tall under the bright stage lights, did something that no one in the crowd expected. With deliberate care, he reached up and removed his iconic red MAGA hat, the symbol of his campaign that had become instantly recognizable across the country. The gesture alone was enough to draw a collective gasp from the audience, who watched with rapt attention as he bent down toward Emily. His movements were slow, almost reverent, as if he understood the weight of what he was about to do. Carefully, he placed the hat on Emily's small head, adjusting it slightly so it fit snugly over her braids. The oversized brim tilted slightly forward, almost covering her wide, tear-filled eyes. Trump straightened and smiled warmly, his expression a mixture of pride and tenderness. His voice, usually so commanding and energetic, softened as he addressed the little girl before him. "Emily," he began, his tone carrying a depth of sincerity that resonated across the silent room. "From now on, this hat is yours. Let it remind you to always be brave, to stay determined, and to do good things for the people around you, no matter where life takes you. Remember that strength and kindness go hand in hand." The crowd, still holding their collective breath, watched as Emily reached up to touch the brim of the hat. Her small fingers brushed against the fabric as if she were holding something precious, something far greater than a simple piece of campaign memorabilia. She looked up at Trump, her tear-filled eyes reflecting a sense of wonder and gratitude far beyond her years. After a moment of hesitation, she softly spoke, her voice trembling but full of heartfelt sincerity. "I hope you do your best so that everyone can be happy." Her words, simple yet profound, fell into the hushed hall like a stone dropped into still water, creating ripples that seemed to move through every heart in the room. For a brief moment, the world seemed to pause as those present absorbed the innocence and wisdom contained in her statement. Trump's gaze softened even further, and he placed a reassuring hand on her small shoulder. His expression, often defined by confidence and drive, now carried a rare sense of emotion. In a steady voice that carried both conviction and gratitude, he replied, "I promise you, Emily, thank you for reminding me why we're all here today." The weight of his words lingered in the air for a beat before the silence gave way to an eruption of applause. The cheers were deafening, rising and falling like waves. As the crowd rose to their feet, some wiped tears from their eyes, moved not just by the moment but by the raw humanity of it, a connection between a powerful leader and a child who had asked for nothing but hope. Emily turned and walked off the stage, her mother waiting at the base of the steps with open arms. As she reached her, Emily's small hands instinctively went to the hat perched on her head. She adjusted it carefully, almost as if it were a crown, her fingers lingering on the brim as though to remind herself that it was real. To Emily, the hat was no longer just a campaign symbol or a keepsake. It had become something far more significant, a token of courage, love, and an unspoken promise for a better future. As she left the stage, the cheers of thousands still ringing in her ears, she held her mother's hand tightly, her small face glowing with quiet pride. The moment wasn't just about a man or his campaign. It was about what that moment represented, a bridge between generations, a reminder that hope and determination could be sparked by even the smallest of voices. For those watching, it was a moment they wouldn't soon forget, a story that would be told long after the rally ended. The image of Donald Trump gently placing the iconic red MAGA hat on Emily's head was more than just a touching gesture. It was the defining moment of the rally. In the Grand Hall, filled with thousands of cheering supporters, this seemingly small, fleeting act resonated on a deeper level. It was the kind of moment that transcended politics, reminding everyone present of something far more profound: the power of connection, the weight of responsibility, and the enduring hope for a brighter future. As Trump bent down and carefully adjusted the hat on Emily's small head, the crowd's thunderous energy seemed to pause, replaced by an almost sacred quiet. Cameras flashed, capturing the sight of a powerful man and a 6-year-old girl locked in an exchange that needed no words to convey its importance. For a brief moment, the spotlight wasn't on policies or campaign slogans. It was on the humanity that binds us all. Emily, her face glowing with a mixture of pride and emotion, stood still as Trump spoke softly to her. His words, though addressed to the child, felt like they were meant for everyone in the room. The promise he made to her, to always strive for a better, kinder America, echoed like a collective pledge to the future. The simplicity of the gesture and the sincerity of the moment stirred something deep within the audience. Many found themselves wiping away tears, moved by the reminder that even amidst the high stakes of a political campaign, there was space for tenderness and genuine connection. The story of Trump and Emily quickly became the heart of the evening, a symbol of something larger than the rally itself. It wasn't just about a hat or a promise. It was about the idea that everyone, regardless of their age or position, has a role to play in building a better America. Whether you're a leader shaping national policy or a curious 6-year-old asking innocent but powerful questions, each person carries the potential to inspire faith, hope, and change. As Emily stepped off the stage, the applause swelled once again, louder and more unified than before. It wasn't just a response to Trump or his speech. It was a celebration of the moment itself. People in the crowd turned to one another, sharing knowing smiles or exchanging heartfelt words about what they had just witnessed. The rally, which had begun as a display of political fervor, had transformed into something far more intimate and impactful. That night, the story of Emily and the red hat became a memory etched into the hearts of everyone who attended. It was a promise, a quiet but powerful assurance that, despite the challenges America faced, its spirit remained unbroken. The moment was a reminder that greatness wasn't just about achievements or victories. It was about compassion, unity, and the belief that a brighter future was always within reach. Long after the event ended, as the crowd dispersed and the hall emptied, the image of Emily standing on stage with the red hat firmly on her head lingered in the minds of those who had been there. For many, it wasn't just the highlight of a rally. It was a story they would carry with them, a story about hope and the enduring belief in the promise of tomorrow. My dear friends, if this story has touched your heart, let its message of hope and connection spread far and wide. Click like to share its light with others. Subscribe to join a community committed to inspiration and unity. And leave a comment to share your thoughts. Your words might spark hope in someone who needs it. This story reminds us that no act is too small, no voice too quiet to make a difference. Emily's innocent question and Trump's heartfelt response showed how moments of compassion and connection can inspire a room full of people and beyond. Like Emily, we all have the power to ask questions, to dream, and to build something better together. Take this moment as a reminder that we each play a part in creating a brighter future. By showing kindness, by being brave, and by sharing stories of hope, we can spark a change far greater than ourselves. May you always find strength in your journey, courage in your heart, and love in your community. Together, let us continue to build a world where every voice matters, every effort counts, and every heart is touched by hope. Blessings to you all.